we're hurting.
Yeah, Jay's in a lunch meeting right now, so he's like, I'm gonna be a little bit late. So, yeah. And then Wendy was going to do it, but she is also in a meeting right now.
They'll probably
Everybody's
start
always.
to like a half full room and then they'll
I told everybody.
trickle in. Yeah, but these are seniors, they don't take well on the following.
That's what I told you. Yeah.
We're all low power days.
Yes.
Very, very multicultural.
A lot of
It starts when I get here.
fours.
He is of course.
They have to be unique.
I feel like there's a lot of threes and fours. Lots of threes and fours,
Three when it work.
which is not me. I forget what mine was.
Yeah.
So I haven't done so. I haven't touched Enneagram in years.
I was just saying to my colleague, maybe
That's
if Lily would ever said this weekend was like described to our church, show us it. That alone was a good talk. I manage our facilities
We're doing this together.
What am I gonna do? Minus your emotional spirit?
Come on. All right, everyone. Welcome to session 3. Can we say thanks to Caleb and Jess for putting together a great lunch? Jess here is our conference director. If you have issues or complaints, please direct them to her. Jess, anything to say?
Nope.
All right, we're gonna. I already told Dr. Lee. Can we say thanks to Dr. Lee here? Great content. I told Dr. Lee he'll probably start to a mostly empty room because that's just how we roll sometimes. But they will trickle in. So let's give a warm Collegiate Church Network welcome to Dr. Lee.
That's Harry to you. All right, well, a couple of commercials before we get started. If you like all this stuff and you're interested in furthering your training in it, it's a multi-step process. You have to go through the CQ Center to get this first certification. And then they've partnered with us to do a second one called Train the Trainer for Christian Leaders. And, it'll just help you understand more and more about CQ, how to use it in a Christian context. And this is we've been doing these now for about a year, and this was our first class. We're about to start our third one in May. So if you're at all interested in any of that, you can scan that QR code and come see us. Also, if you're interested in the economic side of church, which it sounds like based on your model with support raising and all of that, finances is always front and center with a lot of your thinking, and the reality of church finances is crazy. Depending on where you are, we're of course in a very under-resourced area, so everything we've been doing, which is very non-traditional church financing, is very similar, has offshoots and some overlap with the way you all are financing your ministries. What we do, we just keep saying we've got to build multiple streams of income. And the reason that happened is over 10 years ago, in 2010, the largest survey of churches on the American church was done by a professor named Dave Olson. And I was at the conference where he presented his findings. And in his findings, he showed church growth as a function of median household income. And you can imagine the churches that were growing the fastest were all in the most affluent areas. You step down in median household income, church growth stepped down. And eventually it broke evens where there was no growth, and that was at around $50,000 median household income. And then when he started going into poverty areas, it turned negative. And so you see this stair step where it breaks even, and then he does 2 more categories. The lowest one was $30,000, which I knew that was the median household income of our zip code. And of course, there was a nice step in the negative, which just means churches are dying. And he just basically said this: what's the long-term impact on the church in America if this trend continues? That was a seminal moment for us because as we sat there, everybody just stood there in silence looking at this table. And I immediately came to my mind was the verse that says, the kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet, catches all types of fish. And I had this picture of a dragnet over the U.S. with big holes in the net over all the areas that needed the gospel the most. And so in that moment, I remember thinking, we have got to find ways to make our knot in the net the strongest we can possibly make it. So we've been working on economic models for 15 years now. A big part of that is our nonprofit. We have a nonprofit that shares space with us. And so, nonprofits are much easier to raise grants, get government contracts, all of that. We share space, we share costs. All of our neighborhood needs, a lot of the ministries that come out of the church that empower the community eventually get put in a nonprofit. So eventually it goes off the church budget and into the nonprofit instead. We also, with that big building, we have a bunch of very strategic partnerships. The first one, which takes almost half of the building, is a $10 a month fitness company. But the owner was so committed. He's a very committed Christian. He loved what we were doing. He wanted to know if he could get a fitness center to work in our area of town. So he took a chance when he found out what we were doing. He invested $1.7 million into that half of the building. He did his own build out. And then he pays still like a very nominal amount of rent, like $6,500 a month for about 40,000 square feet, which is a really good deal. But he invested $1.7 million into our building, which allowed us to talk to banks about financing our half of the building. And then we also have two very strategic partners in our building. One is a low-cost primary care health center. They target under-resourced areas and provide primary care for $300 a year. And the other is a counseling clinic that provides low-cost community counseling. They teach classes for master's and PhD students during the day in our classrooms, but then they also have an open clinic to the public, very low-cost professional counseling. So those strategic partnerships, we're working to get those partnerships up to where the rental receipts cover the mortgage. We were like that close before the mortgage reset happened at the end of last year. Now we're shy about another $5,000. But nonetheless, church economics, we've been talking about for 15 years. If you're interested in just exploring different ways of thinking about it, this is happening in June at Mosaic in Little Rock, and it's like a 48-hour economic sprint just to help you start, brushing off the cobwebs, helping you think differently, and you'll just get to see whatever it is we're doing down there. All right. Any questions about anything before I get started? Okay, so we were just finishing up power distance. And the most important thing about power distance that I want you to remember is this. You as a leader need to know where you stand on this power distance spectrum. You also need to know where all your people stand, especially the ones involved in who's impacted by your decisions. And then the number one tip I have for you is that you define the decision-making process. It's not the decision that's usually controversial. It's the way you make the decision that makes that controversial, especially depending on your high power distance, but you're leading low power distance people, or your low power distance and you're leading high power distance people. And so just put yourself in your shoes of all those different scenarios, but you got to figure it out for yourself, and then figure out the way others are viewing the same decision, and then make adjustments to the process so that, let's say you currently are at the average as a 67, but you know you got some low power distance people on your team, which in this case, low power distance will be Chris and Jeanette, it looks like. I don't know if they're in the room or not. But how do you handle that? If you got some really high power distance people on your team, you know that the people on the far right are expecting you to make the decision. Okay? The people on the far left are expecting you to consult them before you make this decision. They want to be heard. Okay, so the best thing you could do is have those discussions. If you're at a 69 where this average is for this team, but you know you've got the 18s down there, go to the 18s, tell them, hey, I'm thinking about this decision. What do you think? Get their input, consider it all. Man, thank you so much. Very helpful. I'm going to make this decision on Friday. I'll announce it on Friday. Thank you for your input. When I make the decision, please respect it. Okay, so just defining the decision-making process takes so much of the conflict out of the decision-making process. Usually the conflict is not over the decision itself, it's over what? How the decision was made. So if you can bear that in mind, you'll have high CQ. Okay. Let's keep moving. I'm going to do one more, then we'll jump to the front of your report. This is called uncertainty avoidance. This is how comfortable do you live in uncertainty? And right now, on average, you're not very comfortable. And so high uncertainty avoidance means you like to plan, you like to be predictable, you just like to be ready, you like to be organized. On the low end, there are people on the 9s who like to figure it out as you go. You know who you are. And those that are on the high side know who the low ones are, right? But notice this, in this case, we start to get a little fuzzy in the research because there's not a ton of very good research domestically, and this is where they start saying, okay, quit using those research domestic scales, start talking more about behavioral preferences because there's been so much globalization that some of this research starts getting a little bit blurry. So we'll start talking about these values more as behavioral preferences than cultural values as we go. But what's interesting about all of this is that this one is one of the most controversial. It may not be as prevalent as individualism, collectivism, and power distance, but is definitely controversial because in the church especially, you can over-spiritualize this concept. How? Well, suppose you're down here at 9, which, by the way, I'm a 9. The founder of our church is also a 9. And so we're both very, very low uncertainty, which means we're very comfortable figuring it out along the way, okay? We're very comfortable with being agile and pivoting in the moment to find the best way. We're very comfortable with people not doing their assessments and just having to figure it out and stay up the night before to get the presentation ready the next day. Other people will be like, that's not happening. The deadline was at 12 o'clock on last Friday. They're just missing out. Okay, but the way it can be over-spiritualized is how? Let go and let God. That's exactly right. It's like, if you're not careful, you could just say, hey, God's got this. He'll take care of it. We'll figure it out. It can be over-spiritualized, but it can also be true. during COVID, when everybody was freaking out. You know who really freaked out on the high uncertainty side is all you finance people, which is all of you probably, right? The way this church's financial model is, I'm sure a lot of you, that may be why, on average, you're very high uncertainty, because you like to plan, you like to have that finances in order. Financial people tend to be very high uncertainty avoidance. They've got a 2 or 3 year budget. But for us, man, there were parts of COVID that were so exciting to us, to Mark and myself. It's like, we don't even know if we're going to have church on Sunday. What can we do? Well, let's figure it out. How can we be more effective online? I was like, ooh, let me try that. We don't have a lot of money, but let me see if I can develop a low-cost streaming platform that'll look professional. You know, those kinds of things. So that's where, if you're not careful, you know, you can't over-spiritualize it. But you also can't look at each other and go, yeah, that guy is so disorganized. Why is he so irresponsible? But neither more can that guy down there look at the person on the far end that's super well planned and say, that person is so inflexible and rigid. That's hurting the kingdom. You see where we both have our place. Now, back in the early days when we were first starting, our church was church in a box, and we met in the afternoon, and we had to move everything in every Sunday, and it was like 2 hours of physical labor just to get the church set up. From the sound system to all these flags to the classrooms, everything had to be trucked in, set up. We'd have our service, and then we'd have to clean up, truck it out, store it for the next Sunday. It was exhausting. And and it continues to be. And but a lot of times on Sunday, it'd be like, you know, service starts, back then we met at 4:30. And it'd be like, church starts in half an hour. What are we doing today? And Mark and I would plan the service on the back of a napkin. Okay, I'll start out. We'll do 2 songs here. Then you come up, you do this. We write it all down. And that was our order of service. You can't run a church very long with that mentality. Eventually, we had to get very high power, very high uncertainty people on our staff, okay? And really, the more people you're managing, the higher the uncertainty the average should be. So where you are is not a bad place at all. It's necessary in a lot of cases, but you just have to bear in mind, how agile are you, you know, as it comes to your planning? If something happens on Thursday and there's a national event, I don't know, maybe it's a George Floyd, or maybe it's some other issue that happens, and you want to address it on Sunday, could you make the change? Could you say, hey, we need to get 10 minutes of prayer time for this happening? Or are you so stuck in the systems that it's like, sorry, the pattern's full. We maybe can do it in 2 Sundays. You know, for some mega churches, those patterns are full to the second for weeks because of all the worship, the different campuses, the timing of the video coming in. But if you're not careful, if you're so high uncertainty avoidance that you're so planned out that you can't address the needs in the moment, the people that are hurting the most are going to come in and go, can you believe that? They didn't even address what happened. And instead of it being, well, you got to understand our services are planned 3 weeks in advance. It's their time to the second. We got 4 campuses. Video has to go in, yada, yada, yada. And they're going, don't you even care? You know, and that's where the judgment comes in, right? That's where the moralization comes in based on a cultural issue. Now, here's the point. Be very careful about moralizing a perspective you do not understand. So here you have now the king, and it looks real obvious like he's flipping somebody off, you know? It's like, how dare him? He's obviously in sin. But in reality, you're just sitting in the wrong perspective. That has happened to me more times than I can count, where somebody will come up and say, why is this person always telling me, yes, they're going to get this done, they're going to be here on Tuesday, but when that comes to Tuesday, they're never around. And they go, is it because they disrespect me so much, or they have a lack of character? And I'll go, is those the only two choices? You know, because once you ask, where are they from? Oh, they're from Mexico. Okay, so their time frame is different than you, number one. Are you their boss? Yeah. So they have probably very high power distance related to who you are. Do you think they're ever going to tell you no to your face? Never really thought about that. Maybe they respect you so much as their boss that they're never going to tell you no because they don't want to displease you. Even if you ask them to do something they know they can't do, they maybe think they can do it, but then when they can't do it, then they have to kind of save face so they just don't show up. And maybe it's neither of those two responses that you gave that are assigned to a moral character issue with that person. You know, and then it becomes, oh, thank you. You know, those are the kinds of things, if you can recognize it, diffuse it, educate around it, understand it, it'll help a lot with regard to unity. Now, I had a couple questions I wanted to address. One was, I can't remember, somebody asked, so what's the difference between maintaining unity and pursuing unity? Okay, and you can, I don't know, even you can, I like to talk in terms of oneness more than unity. Oneness, there doesn't mean unanimity. Oneness means there's difference in perspective, but there's ultimate agreement going forward. Okay, and one thing I'll say about oneness, it changes like the weather. Okay, you could get a single phone call that'll change the oneness of your organization just like that. All it takes is one ticked off elder or elder's wife or staff member or something, and it's like this whole thing with oneness and unity is really hard to build, really easy to tear down. Don't be discouraged when that happens. It's like the weather. It can change on a dime. But what's important about that, the preservation part of unity and oneness, is the process when those happen. So don't get discouraged when things become disunified. But make everybody stick to the process. The process is well-defined, is scriptural, and you just keep pounding home the need to reconcile, get together with that person, try to solve it one-on-one. Don't drag me into it until you've at least had one conversation. You know, and follow the process, follow the process, follow the process. You know, and that's really the best advice I can give you on that part of maintaining. Never give up on the process, constantly pound it home. When you see it's out of order, recognize it out of order. When you get called in ahead of two people trying to work it out, force them to try to work it out. Only get involved. Once you're involved, it becomes a whole different issue. Pastor Harry's going to get involved now, and depending on who that person is, if they're super high power distance, it's like, I'm not showing up for that meeting. Why would I show up for that meeting? What have I done? That kind of thing. But then the other thing, which is how do I pursue this? And this is what all of this is you pursue it by trying and working consistently to understand how another is perceiving all these different issues. Okay? Now, how much did you change and how much did you pursue it? Let me show you this one. Oh, not that one. Where is it? Here it is. This is expressiveness. How expressive are you? Some cultures, you never have to worry about what they're feeling. They show it on their face. That's what's called a loud face. And if they're happy, they know it, and if they're sad, you know it. If they're discouraged, you see it. If they're joyful, you never have to worry about how they feel because they show it, just like the mask says, they have a loud face. But the non-expressive people are hard to read. Okay, and very rarely are they going to be the ones that express themselves loudly. They're not going to be the kind that jump up and down. They're not going to go, awesome, high five. They're going to be more like, great, not bad. You know? And so, remember, coming from an Asian home, by the way, both my parents are from China. They both immigrated here in the 40s from different parts of China. They came here for further education. They both got trapped here in the U.S. by the Communist Revolution. They couldn't go back even if they wanted to. My dad ended up, just because he had nothing else to do, he ended up doing a PhD at Georgia Tech, like his son followed him. And then he moved to Chattanooga where he met my mother, who had come to Chattanooga to further her education. They couldn't talk to each other in Chinese because they left China before Mandarin was even instituted as a national language. So they could only speak broken English to each other. And so I grew up in a house only speaking English, which is why I've got such a good Southern twang, right? And so people ask, do I know 2 languages? I always say, yeah, I know English and Southern raw. What else do you want? But, and to all the Caucasians out there, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. You have 2 parents that can't speak Chinese, but to all the Chinese people out there, I'm a severe disappointment. It's always 3 ticks. You do understand Chinese, don't you? No, I don't. You don't even understand it? No, and it's always this. I don't know why. I don't know. If you're Asian, you would know what that is like, but just constantly, it's the 3 ticks and the, you know, that kind of thing. But nonetheless, in my household, you never express yourself. Typical Asian household, what was paramount in that household, you always kept the peace. You never showed anger. If you showed anger, you lost the argument even before you started. You never disagreed with Dad. All of that. Outside of my household, pure Southern kid experience. I mean, I learned to like grits. I would go walking on railroad tracks, eat moon pies and RC colas with my friends, shoot BB guns, play baseball and all that. So I was constantly traversing these 2 cultures. But what was interesting is nobody in my household ever told each other that they loved each other. I knew my parents loved me, no question, but it was just never said. You can ask 1,000 Asian households, probably 900 of them would say, yeah, that's the way it was in mine too. When I became a Christian at 21, what was strange was that the people at the church, these college students, started telling me that they loved me, which I thought was the strangest thing I'd ever seen. I didn't know how to say it back, but eventually I did learn to say, I love you back. And it felt pretty good. I'd never learned to express love before. And it was so strange to say it to other guys because it just was so foreign to my being. And it became so good after a while that I thought, you know, it's crazy that I'm sitting here telling all these guys and people in the college ministry that I love them, and I've never once told my parents. I'm going to go home and tell them that I love them. So I drove home from Knoxville to Chattanooga just to tell my parents that I loved them. And when I got home, as soon as I got in the house, I couldn't say it. You know how when you get home, you automatically resort back to those old patterns and just the way things are? And I tried the whole weekend to gather the courage to say I love you, and I could not do it. And finally, I was backing up in my car. I had my car in reverse, the window was down. They're standing by my car, and how I wish we had smartphones back in that day. I would have done one of these, Because I finally was like, I'm just sitting there yelling at myself, do it, Harry. You got to tell him you love him. Just do it. And finally I turned to him and I just said, I love you guys. And they looked at me and just went, okay, bye. And that was the extent. And that broke the dam, though, because it became easier for me to say. And once I started saying it, eventually they started telling me back. You know, and my expressiveness moved from maybe where the 26 to probably mid-scale or so until I got to Mosaic. Now, Mosaic, very urban, lots of African Americans, lots of Hispanics, and man, do those people know how to worship expressively. It took me a year and a half to learn to clap on the upbeat. But, you know, but then when it came to giving hugs, that's where it really got uncomfortable. All right, and I just remember the older African American women would make fun of me in front of me. And they would say stuff like, oh, Harry doesn't know how to give hugs. And I go, what are you talking about? I hug you every week. And they'd be like, yeah, you give me this mamby-pamby side hug. And I go, how do you want to be hugged? And it was full-on bear hug. Now, I'm probably to the right of where you are now as a group because I had to be. It was very uncomfortable to start giving bear hugs to the women in our church. But it was necessary because I realized it's not the way I want to love them, it's the way they want to be loved. Now, you can't do that for everybody, but you have to learn when to do it, where to do it, how to do it, all of those different things. And the point is, how far should you be willing to be uncomfortable? What's the answer? Yeah, as far as Christ will take you, right? That's what Paul did. Those outside of the law became as one outside the law, just not outside the law of Christ. So as far as Christ would take me. So you should be willing to traverse yourself for the sake of the gospel across these spectrums. Sometimes you're going to go one way, sometimes somebody else may actually move towards you. Sometimes they may be immature and not willing to move towards you. But if God is calling you to be that, move for the sake of the gospel. Be uncomfortable for the sake of the gospel. Learn new things for the sake of the gospel. Okay, now let's move to the front of your report and look at your capability scores, and we'll come back to some of these values as we go through this. Now this one, remember on the profile, now I'm in the front on page 4, we want everybody to be moving to the right. We want everybody to be moving towards the orange. Now, don't be ashamed of where you are. Okay, it's just where you are. I'll show you some of my first scores here in a minute. But the first time you take it, a lot of times you don't even know what the question is asking. You don't even know what the concepts are it's asking about. And you just have to, over time, educate yourself. The best thing you could do over time is just keep taking the assessment as honestly and authentically as you can, and you will see personal growth and development. Okay, now that's what this is for, personal growth and development. If I did say, hey, your raises depend on how your assessment scores come out on CQ, you can bet you would all be in the orange, all right? You could fake it out, just like a personality test. You can know what they are looking for in the answer. But just if you can be as honest and as authentic about it, over time, you'll see your scores keep marching towards the orange. Now, these are what's called self-rated scores, which means it's your opinion of yourself. But remember, you've got a lot of bias. You know, so your scores may not be accurate. There's other ways to do it if you want. There's what's called a CQ 360 where others answer questions about you, and then you can kind of compare those kinds of things. So just bear in mind, it could be a lot with how tired you were, how rushed you were, how caffeinated you were, how sleepy you were. that could impact your score. So that's why it's like really important over time. Just keep taking the assessment, be as authentic as you can every time, and it'll all settle out over time. So the first one that the thing measured was drive, and we need to have a pretty good talk about this one, because this is your level of interest, persistence, and confidence when you engage those not like yourself. And this was among your lowest score. Now, there's 3 subcategories to it. You're below worldwide norms, and the 3 categories are intrinsic interests, extrinsic interests, and self-efficacy. So intrinsic means you derive personal enjoyment by interacting with others in these situations where it may not be familiar to you, where there's a lot of diversity, where there's a lot of cultural differences. And look where you guys scored. You're almost in the lowest 25% of worldwide norms. That's the light gray bar. The middle 50% is the dark gray bar, and the highest 25% is the orange bar. Extrinsic means that you know this is important, you know it's valuable to you and your organization. That's also below worldwide norms, and so is your confidence in that. Okay, which means that either you've not had the experience and you're not confident, or you've tried and it failed miserably. So, let's hear from you. Why do you think the scores are like this? I can guess, but it'd be better if we heard from you all. What do you feel like has happened? Have you been canceled in the past? Made mistakes in the past? You've tried it once and it failed horribly? Or you're just not around enough people? You haven't had the right opportunities? What is it? What do you think?
Our church has been canceled in the past. Our campus. Over at U of M, our church has been canceled in the past. I'm sure we're still canceled in the hearts and minds of many individuals and groups on campus. It's a very politically diverse in a way, but also very left-leaning as a campus, as a town, Ann Arbor, Michigan. And as I've interacted with like other ministries, Christian and other religious organizations, there's a lot of tension in just some of the heated like political, social environments. So as I think about like intrinsic, especially motivation to engage cross-culturally, I feel aware of the many like social landmines involved.
So a lot of it has to do with just the fear of stepping on those landmines. You know, someone else.
Just some experience from being in like a pretty established church to all of a sudden like a new church plant. I think what I noticed when we were established, been there for years, there's a comfort level of just being in your own Christian bubble of people are coming to us, this is what we do. There's comfort and enjoyment in that because in some ways it's easier. It doesn't push on some of those things that you feel uncomfortable with or are afraid about. And so I think that could be one thing too, is like we grow comfortable in that Christian environment and therefore struggle to go out and enjoy those other culturally diverse areas.
That's good.
I think one thing I wrestled with is just efficiency, the idea that I can't know or learn all those different cultures. And so some sense of it is, hey, until I'm thrust into an environment where I need it, my brain space is limited, and so my drive to go learn something just to learn it is not high until I know that I need it. And I know there's just so many, even in our own church context, there's so many different ones to learn that I only have so much energy to go around. So when I begin to interact with this person, then I want to learn. But to learn ahead of time, on the possibility that I might encounter somebody like this someday, so I'm more prepared in that moment feels overwhelming or impossible.
All very good, valid reasons.
Some of the values in the self-efficacy, I mean, for me, I scored a little higher in those areas. I think because I've just had friends or coworkers across many years from different places, India, China, Europe, and failing a lot in interactions and learning from it is kind of how that gets better. And so if and those aren't, I mean, it all starts with knowing who you are and being confident in Christ so that you can engage in those environments and be okay failing and then coming back. And that greatly shifts the self-efficacy portion of that, the more experience you have.
Good. Now, somebody else?
Thanks. You or someone can teach me more about this, but as I was taking the survey, a thought I had was like how it can be helpful to know kinds of people and the way they think and function, and I think of like personality tests. And once you get a sense of like common norms for certain kinds of people and the way they think, you can like categorize them and quickly have some available heuristics for this is how they think, here's how I can connect with them in a way that makes sense. But I've also seen like an overdependence on those heuristics lead to not treating people with like their unique individuality, so coming from an individualistic mindset, but the idea of like, oh, you're an ESFJ, so I'm familiar with how to interact with people who are ESFJs, and then you realize, well, not everyone's the same, and you really just need to get to know the person well enough to understand those things. So I think there's some question I have around the motivation of like, learning cultures versus learning the people that are in front of me. Kind of like what Joel was saying, of interacting with people, learning about them and their family on an individual basis versus like a broad cultural sense.
Yeah, and really the answer is both of those things need to happen, where you become a student of both culture and people. One is because, remember, as you interact, what I'm teaching you here today are not ending points. The very last thing you should do is use this knowledge to kind of put people in a box and to assume they're this way. Really, what this is teaching you to do is understand the wide, infinite uniqueness of the Imago Dei. Who Christ is, how is Christ expressed infinitely, uniquely in every single person across these spectrums. Okay, and what this should give you is not ending points, but starting points for your discussions. It can be everything from like, hey, tell me about what your family did for Thanksgiving, and who was in your family, and how big was it, and how did you all celebrate, and things like that. And you can start piecing together, oh yeah, they're definitely high collectivism, they're definitely high individualism, those kinds of things, and then just keep exploring. But you have to know like the framework so that you can begin those discussions and begin learning and processing as you do. It's just like everything else, right? It's like memorizing scripture. If all you do is memorize scripture, it helps you how much? That much. At least you kind of know where it is. But if you don't review it and don't apply it, it doesn't really help you a whole lot, right? And this is the same way. You got to know it, you got to apply it, and learn how to use it in these contexts. What else was I going to say about this one? Because, a lot of it has to do with confidence and with just mistakes that's happened in the past. Oh, I know what I was going to say now. Failure is part of the process. You have to make mistakes. The important thing is how and where you make those mistakes. So much of it if you can frame the conversation with, hey, I'm trying to learn, I'm going to make mistakes, but I really would like to learn, just the way you're thinking about things. I'd like to get to know you personally. I'd like to just understand how you're viewing the world. And can I start asking you questions and, just those kinds of things. There'd be so many people that would welcome that. So don't be afraid, but at the same time, I kind of like where you are self-efficacy-wise in relationship to the other two. What's scary is when you're overconfident and you have those other two scores like that. That's where it's a foot ready to be inserted in mouth, essentially. But let me just encourage you to be uncomfortable. Think about what Paul said. It's all for the sake of the gospel. This was Paul's drive, ultimately. He does it all for the sake of the gospel. If you can put yourself in a position where the gospel is front and center and for the building up of the body of Christ, you're engaging others so that you can learn to love and to serve them. That's a completely different mindset. Don't make people your project. Just get to know them so that you can learn to love and serve. The other thing I want to really encourage you to do is will yourself to be uncomfortable. Look for those opportunities and cultivate a sense of urgency and momentum because, the times are changing. The landscape of America is changing. Your college campuses are changing, and the neighborhoods around the college campuses are changing. And the more you embrace this, the more ready you will be in terms of next-gen leadership. They say that America will be minority-majority as a country by 2040-something. And that just means that the white population will continue to shrink compared to the other populations, which will continue to grow. That shouldn't scare you. It's the greatest leadership opportunity of our lifetime. I keep waiting for a national leader to emerge that knows how to build bridges instead of divide. It's a lot easier to divide, but the people who learn to manage, to lead, to build consensus, because pretty soon there will be no racial majority in the entire country. Who's going to win in that case? It's whoever can build the most coalition with the people not like themselves. And so you as a young leader have the opportunity to be on the forefront of that leadership. It's the greatest leadership opportunity of our lifetime. More new leaders are going to emerge that know how to build these bridges, know how to build a coalition that can bring people together. Those people will be worth their weight in gold. So intentionally, be intentional. Remember, this is all about the sowing. This is all about Paul saying, I have made myself. If you don't make yourself, I was just on the call with the director of the Billy Graham Center at Wheaton College, and he said, the churches in America, the white homogeneous churches, are all shrinking. And I told our staff, I said, they're not shrinking because people are walking away from God, though there's some of that. Mostly it's shrinking because the white population is in decline. That's a fact. Go look it up. And so it's just like the level of the sea. The sea level is lowering. So what does that do to churches that are largely homogenous with Caucasians? It makes their church large. If one church is increasing, more than likely another church is decreasing. That's called zero sum. That's stagnant, where where the population is staying the same. But now that it's actually in decline, they're fighting over larger market shares of a declining market, which those of you in a business world know that's like the worst possible scenario. And so what I keep trying to encourage people to do is expand expand, expand. Look for ways to include more people. How do I make them more welcome? Otherwise, you're just going to be managing decline over time. So this is of urgency. Eventually, over time, it's going to cost a lot. So really, will yourself in those cases. And it can start in small ways. I used to hate greens. You know, my mom stir-fried everything, so it was like, she would stir-fry spinach, stir-fry broccoli, and every vegetable was really crisp and tender. I love my mother's cooking. When I got to Mosaic and people started serving me greens, it was like, oh my gosh, what is this mushy stuff? Anybody even know what greens are around here? Well, you gotta be from the South, but it's a mushy green thing. They boil it, overboil it, because it's a really tough vegetable. But I could hardly stand it when I first moved to Little Rock until I realized that if I don't learn to eat this stuff, I'm never gonna get invited to another African-American house for dinner if I don't learn to like it. And I just forced myself. I'd put a spoonful in my mouth, and I couldn't stand the texture, but I would just keep telling myself, you like this, Harry. You like this. You gotta like this. You know? And I'd chew it slowly and get used to the texture. And eventually it's like, you know, it does kind of taste a little bit like my mom's spinach, but it's just not crunchy. And I just kept telling myself, like it, like it, like it. And eventually I loved it. So much so that I'd make a big deal about loving it, and they would send me home with like containerfuls of it, or I'd find a container on my desk. But all of that is for the sake of the gospel. You should be willing to put yourself in those positions. Just make sure you let people know and frame the conversation as you go. What about knowledge? Let's look at knowledge. Now, don't be too concerned about this one either. The good thing about this score is that it's the easiest to fix, because so much of it just requires you learning and reading and being able to recognize different things. Let's see what's going on here. Hopefully that'll work. See if this is coming. There we go. All right. So what did this measure? It measured your understanding of business and other cultures, which, you know, they're changing that eventually to systems and economic systems, your understanding of the way systems work. Values and norms, which is very, very important. That one needs to improve as much as possible, as fast as possible, especially with groups you're working with in your churches. If you have a high Hispanic population in your area, you need to learn as much as you can about families, about culture, about values and norms. India, China, any of those, that score, you can improve that greatly just by watching movies and reading books about those cultures. The sociolinguistic score is super critical if you ever have hopes of doing first-gen ministry. You know, this means, you know, you don't have to learn the language, but you have to know about the language. You need to know about translation. You need to know about when you can use Google Translate, whether or not you need an interpreter, whether or not the interpreter should be live, in person, on the stage, with a mic, or in a sound booth, and what the differences are, and how that impacts your congregation. All of those are really critical. You need to know how to pronounce names correctly. Don't butcher a name. You know, And all of that shows up there. If you just learn, like, how do you do basic pronunciations? I can read Spanish. I can read it out loud. I could read from a Spanish Bible. You know, it's about a 6th grade level of reading, but I can do it. And if I'm really practicing, I can make it sound really smooth and articulate, you know, to where people start saying, oh, Pastor knows Spanish? But it takes practice and intentionality. Those are really important. By the way, if you're ever with somebody that's first gen and they have their spouse, and maybe they're bilingual, but their spouse doesn't speak any English, the worst mistake you could do is pretend like they don't exist. You know, you ask questions about them in third person. Does he do this? Does she? And they're just standing right there. The best thing you could do in that situation is look that person straight in the face and go, how are you? My name's Harry. What's your experience been like here in America? And automatically, the bilingual person will start translating for you. And the fact that you're engaging them and looking them in the eye and actually speaking to them like they exist and you're seen makes a huge difference. There's an executive of a college board that admitted in front of everybody at a CQ place, my wife, and we have been so hurt by this, when we go to functions, everybody only wants to talk to me and they pretend like my wife didn't even exist. You know, and that made everybody like, oh, I had no idea. And instead of being uncomfortable, instead of taking the chance and initiating, they just didn't do anything, which says a lot, okay? The leadership skill is also a very critical one. That means what this score represents is that you as an organization pretty much have a defined leadership model. And I bet if we were to ask you what that leadership model looks like, you could all tell me what it is. What is it? Who's a leader in this organization? What are they like? What are the characteristics? What? Humble. What else? Strategist. What else? Good looking. What else? Visionary. What else? Charismatic. Any others? There's probably a whole lot that you're not even thinking about that's not written down that American that is defined, wrapped up in that score right there. And why that's so critical is because if you don't improve and expand your understanding of what leadership looks like from culture to culture, you'll never be able to empower diverse leaders. They'll just feel like, oh, I could never grow in that organization because I'm so different. Just remember, here in America, we value the good old Western lion personality type, right? You know what I'm talking about? The one that never takes no for an answer, the one that could pick up an organization, carry it on their back if they have to, the one that stands up in a crowded room and speaks on behalf of everybody else. You know, here in America, you stand up and you say, well, here's what I think about that, and you do that. A lot of the bosses off to the side are going, keep your eye on that guy. He's our next leader. But if you would do that in Japan, and you stand up in a crowded room and say, here's what I think we should do, and this is, everybody off to the side of you go, keep your eye on that guy. He's our next problem. You know, because leadership looks so different in that culture. In fact, they have a name for you, and it implies that you're a nail that's sticking out of the board, and it needs to be hammered back in the board so it's compliant like and looks like all the other nails. So if you can figure out what leadership looks like, expand your understanding of what it looks and feels like. I was just telling somebody at lunch, a friend of mine was trying to hire a man from India, and they got in front of the executive team for a church. This was a worship leader. And the executive team asked him, what would you do if your boss asked you to do something you didn't agree with? And the man's answer was, why would I ever disagree with what my boss wanted me to do? And they immediately checked him off and said, he's not advancing, he's not assertive enough. And it had nothing to do with leadership for him personally. It had everything with the model imposed by the leadership for here. So learn all of that. It's very, very critical. Some things you can also learn about are this right here. Are they missional or relational? Do they start with mission or do they start with relationship? You guys are all over the place on this one. So you have some very balanced leaders here, but you also have some that are super competitive, which means they're very assertive, and they want to get things done. And you also have some that are extremely collaborative and nurturing. Okay, now, the one that's super cooperative are pretty much by themselves. There's a few of you. You want me to show you who you are? All right, so, does that make sense? Now, what's important here is for the people on the high competitive side, the Mikes, the Natalies, the Gaylas, the Aarons, and the Nicholases, okay, the ones that are super competitive. You cannot take for granted the people that want to do nothing more than to work together, the Danielles, the Sarahs, and the Chris's, all right? What value are the cooperative people adding to your team? Somebody tell me. Say that again.
They're the ones that'll keep you from treating people as projects.
What else? Any others?
The folks that really help lead our community in a shepherding posture.
Yeah, they're the ones that are really making sure nobody's left behind. Okay? And so what's important is the people that are super competitive, the ones who know what needs to be done and who are being really assertive, don't just say, oh, they'll come along, they always do. Okay? You treat them as a partner, someone to be valued, and you work together because they definitely play a role. This is almost a perfect bell curve in the middle. Hope you recognize that. So this is a cultural thing, right? Because a lot of organizations are shifted to the right, very few are shifted to the left. America in general highly values the missional, competitive leader, and the organization here is really centered well. That's probably very much credit to your leadership. Something else you need to know about is breadth versus depth. Do one thing at a time or do a whole bunch of things all together. And again, you guys are right in the middle, and a lot of times, if you're not careful though, the people who are on the linear side, where they like to work at one thing at a time, they're the ones going, can't we finish this a little more thoroughly before we move on? Now, thankfully, you're not bad as an organization. You're very balanced. So that means you do know the value of finishing well before you start. But there's many organizations, everybody's being multitaskers. They're on the far right side of that curve, and nothing's getting finished. Okay? So you got to watch that. Oh, here's an example when our Hispanics did, let's see, this is 2022. Our Hispanics did a Hispanic Heritage Lunch for the whole church, and we had like 10 countries represented, and they fed us unbelievably well. And so I wrote out a thank you note, put it through Google Translator, got the result, sent it. I didn't send it to them yet. I sent it to one of our staff members. I said, here's my first pass. Would you please correct this? They sent me back all the corrections, and then I hand wrote this note. And it took me like 2.5 hours. I am not exaggerating. Because I had to make sure every jot and tittle was perfect. And when I finally got it where I wanted, I took a picture of it and sent it to our leaders. And I posted it on their Facebook page and just said, thank you for what you did for the church. It was such a blessing. Do you know how many times that thing got shared? And just people coming up to me, did you know Spanish? That kind of thing. I mean, just, but I'm telling you, stuff like this goes a long way to others seeing that you are serious about oneness together, serving, loving each other, those kinds of things. Another thing you need to know about, and please stress this with your people. The news issue in a church is horribly divisive. If you have people that only listen to one source of news, you've got to challenge them. Okay, people call it fake news. It's fake on both sides. I hope you understand that. It can be fake anytime, any place. And the most important thing is to get people to think about what another is thinking about on the same issue. Challenge your people. If they're listening, if all they do is turn on the Fox News after 6 and they listen to it to the go to bed, they're going to be in a different world than the people that listen to MSNBC. And it's just so divisive. This is one company's attempt to kind of quantize, both bias and accuracy. That's what that represents. So one thing I have determined is that the most reliable news that's balanced is also the most boring news. Okay, and so really it comes down to this. Really challenge your people. I've showed this chart in church, and I say to our people, who's discipling you? Are you listening to Tucker Carlson more than you're listening to your pastor? I mean, we get, 35 minutes a week? And they're listening to people 3 hours at a stretch every day for 5 days? Do your best to balance out what they're doing, the way they're thinking, and how it impacts people. Here's a great example. We have a guy, he's a longtime elder at the church. He's no longer an elder. He rotated off. His wife, super tenderhearted. They both love the Lord. They both love prayer. He's very opinionated and very conservative politically. But even though he is those things, he'll come to a prayer time and he'll say, Lord, I don't even know how to pray anymore. I've got so much tension inside of me because, yes, I believe we should protect our borders, but at the same time, I come here on Tuesdays and I teach English as a second language to our Hispanics, and I've just fallen in love with these people. They're so kind and gentle. I don't even know how to think about this anymore. And I'm like, that's exactly the way you need to be thinking about it. There should be tension in all of this stuff. You can't just say everybody's this and everybody's that. You should be able to balance out what you're hearing with your personal experience. We learned really early on. We were questioning, before ICE became ICE, they were the Border Patrol. And when we started having a large influx of Hispanics at the church, we asked them, what can we do as a church? And they told us, hey, you can be a church to them. You can love them well, you can feed them well, if they got any needs, give them those needs. What you can't do is pay them to be on your staff or pay them for a job, and you can't provide a place for them to live, that kind of thing. But you can be as Christ would be. And we're like, great, we know how to do that. So that's all we've been doing for 23 years. And lo and behold, a guy came in and asked if they could start an immigration service. And so he started doing paperwork. He was not a lawyer, but he was certified to do this paperwork. He would charge pennies on the dollar to help people through the legal process. And he's helped over 8,000 people with immigration status. You know, and so when all this stuff is happening and all this politics and all the demonization of all this stuff is going on, it makes me want to shout, right? And it makes, what I really want to do is just keep inviting people, hey, come on down. Get involved with our English as a second language program. Come and go to church on the Spanish side and watch the people, get to know people, minister. It'll just give you a different perspective altogether. All right, let's take a break. I got 45 minutes left. Listen, you think you guys could really take a 10-minute break? So if I say take 5, let's take 5. All right, take 5. We'll see you in 5 minutes.
what I was surprised by was the demographics on your side. So it looked like there was more Europe.
Which means that when it comes to planning, they know how to do it well, but they're also in a conversation he told me at the beginning. But,
All right, welcome on back. We're going to be jumping back in. Harry has about 30 more minutes of content he's going to go through. And then for the next session, if you look at your tag, it kind of shows there's a break, and then we're going to come back. We're actually just going to continue straight through from here. So we're going to keep plugging away until the end. If you need to use a restroom or grab a snack, you can do that on your way. But we're going to just continue as we go. And before we get Harry back up here, we're going to take a small intermission to basically let the chapel, you meet someone from the chapel and someone actually talk with you. So if you can welcome up the site pastor of this location, Dan.
Hey everybody, my name is Dan. I'm the campus pastor here. At the chapel, we've got 4 locations all around the city. And I'm the campus pastor at this one that you're at here today. So yeah, I just wanted to say I'm super excited that you guys are here, that you guys are coming together to do the work. How many different ministries do we have represented here? Do we know? 17, and all getting, what's that? And Reliant. Okay, so we'll call it 18. We'll call it 18 because 17 plus 1, you know. It's 18. You guys do college ministry. I know you can get that one. But yeah, super excited that you guys are just coming together to get after what the Lord is doing on college campuses all around the nation. And I'm just looking at some of the flags here of all the different places you guys are coming from. And it's super exciting to see what the Lord is doing. At the chapel, we always talk about how we're on mission to see every man, woman, and child have repeated opportunities to hear and see the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that includes college students. And my favorite thing about doing college ministry is that college people are the most mobile people on earth, right? They are the most mobile people on earth that are going to go out all over the place. They may stay in the city they're in. They may go across the state, across the country, across the world. They could end up anywhere. They've got their whole lives ahead of them. And so to impact their lives right now is to impact a lot of different people through them as well. And so it's super cool to see what you guys are doing. My background is in college ministry. I was in China for a couple of years planting churches on college campuses as well. And so really have a heart for what you guys are doing. Super excited to be able to host you guys. We want to say welcome to you. Our place is your place this week, and so make sure you enjoy it. There's people walking around all over the place. Always feel free to say hi, introduce yourself, and they'll be glad to say hey to you too. But can I just pray for you guys before I send you on? Lord God, we are so thankful for each and every ministry that is represented here today. And we are so thankful for each and every student at the campuses that each and every one of these ministries is at. And Lord, we know that you are a God who loves people. And Lord, as each of these reach out to students on their campuses, I pray that you would impact their lives in a unique way, Lord. Whether they are people who are already believers, who are coming to college and you want them to grow further in their faith, or they've never known you before, Lord, and they are getting to know you the first time through these ministries, God, I pray that you would use them, to impact their lives in a significant way, Lord. That you would give them new life. There's no more significant way that you could impact lives. Lord, you give new life. And I pray that you would do that. I pray that you would encourage these here today to continue on in the good work that you have called them to for many years to come. And I pray that the fruit of their ministries would go out to the nations, Lord. That you would be glorified among the nations. That is your heart's desire, and that's our heart's desire. So we pray that you would do a work among the nations. Lord, help us to make disciples of all nations. Help us to give every man, woman, and child repeated opportunities to hear and see the gospel. We love you, Lord. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. All right, you all, I'm going to really fly through this last section here. And so let's just turn our attention back to our reports. Let's look at strategy and action, and we'll be done. Now, the strategy piece is very critical for you all. Okay, this is the part that measures how much you plan these interactions, how aware you are of them while you're in them, and are you actually able to check your assumptions? You know, one of the most important things for you as you encounter those not like yourself is to suspend assumptions. Okay, do your best not to say, oh, this person must be like this, or they tell you something and you immediately go to a judgment. Just suspend all of that. That's what this strategy piece is all about. The planning piece is actually anticipating who you're going to meet with and what is going to be an important way to approach the conversation. We call this at Mosaic the meeting before the meeting. And especially when we're dealing cross-culturally with people, we will have, sometimes it's just, hey, before that meeting tomorrow at 10, let's all get on, let's do a group call, and we talk about who's coming and what their perspectives are. A lot of times if they're Hispanic, we'll get a Hispanic leader in the conversation and just say, how can we make this more effective? This is a very, very critical piece of CQ and will make or break your leadership, especially cross-culturally. I have a lot of stories about this, but let me tell you, if you can meet about the meeting and talk about those things, it'll pay off in droves, even 10 minutes. And if you don't know what to talk about, get somebody that knows the person, knows that culture of the person, start going through these values, kind of like we've been doing. You know, start with just thinking about the way they were raised, what do you know, how can you find out, and then approach it that way. Why this is so important is, you know, there's just so many assumptions to be made. Let me go back. One very important value related to this is long or short-term planning. You know, this is really a very characteristic part of Christian ministry, is that most organizations are extremely long-term. Now, really, you only have like one short-term person on this whole team. Okay, now think about this, because this is as critical as you strategize about the future. You need to ask yourself, who's waiting, and how long should we expect them to wait? Because right now, they're waiting a long time, because everybody is very long-term. And if you're expecting people to wait 3 or 4 years for change, a lot of them will be gone before it's ever time. And so what's important, like if you look at the chart, who is our short-term person? Mike, is Mike in the room? There he is. Is that you? Is that you? So, let me just real quickly. So Mike is obviously the kind that knows how to get things done, right? Very quickly. So when it comes to the long-term aspects of the organization, there's probably a few frustrations built in there, Mike, as he laughs. Do you want to, like, what would you want people to know about the short-term capabilities?
Oh man, what would I want people to know about the short term? That it's important to be in the moment. I mean, like to be in the moment with a person, to be in the moment with an organization, and that the long term is helpful and important and good, but that the short term is where we are currently. So.
Yeah. Meaning that there's plenty of short-term things that can be done that don't impact the long term, but that would actually be wins that would show that the long term is happening. If you don't know how to find those projects, this is the man to see right here, because he could give you probably a list of 10 things you could get done in 30 days that would show people around you that you are willing to change. Otherwise, it's going to be done the next 3 years. All right, let's talk about action. This is a critical score, like they all are. But this one is all about what you're communicating. Okay, so it's communicating whether or not, it's measuring whether or not you understand how direct or indirect you are. It's measuring if you understand the difference in your accent, volume, and tone, and what you're saying with your body language. Now, your scores really show that you don't know a lot about body language, or that you're unaware of how direct or indirect you might be. Why is that critical? It's super critical as it relates to conflict resolve. Now, let's look at just direct indirectness. You're all over this chart. You've got some super, super direct people, and you have some incredibly indirect people on the team. The direct people say what needs to be said. whether it hurts or not. You know who you are. The indirect people are a whole lot more concerned about how it's said, not what's said, right? The indirect people are also the kind of people that can walk into a room and they're a lot more concerned about the emotions in the room than they are about the content of the room. So to you, as a direct person, if you're off to the left, the indirect person walks in and goes, man, I don't know what's going on in there, but you can cut the tension with a knife. To the direct people, they're like, what tension? What knife? What was going on? And the indirect person is very, very good at reading the emotions. That's one of the reasons they're ultra careful about the way things are said. That's their superpower. So you need them both, because there's plenty of people and lots of students out there who are very indirect, meaning they're expecting you to interpret what's not being said. And that's a very hard thing to do. All right, so you want to see who's where? So here's your super direct people. Your Chris. Chris is on there twice. He must be doubly super correct. Super direct. Victoria, Daniel, Cassie, Jeanette, and Robin. Super, super direct. You guys have to be very careful about that. Sometimes the way things are said is so direct, to the indirect person, it appears as what? Rude. It can be blunt. It can be almost impolite. And to the indirect people, which are the Andrews, the Annas, the Allens, the Ians, the Macy's and Daniels, as a leader, sometimes you need to say what needs to be said. Okay, and so this is all about knowing when and how. Was Jesus direct or indirect? Good answer. Depends, right? But just think, he was so direct at times. You whitewashed tombs. When was he super indirect? Every parable had to be interpreted. I love that passage in Luke 9 where he's like, hey, Simon, I got a story to tell you. And he basically backhands Simon in his own house, in his own party, by basically saying, you don't know how to love. You think you don't have anything to forgive. And I bet it took Simon days before he goes, I think he insulted me in my own house at my own party. You know, so understanding all of that, super critical. When Jesus was indirect, was it any less truth? No, it was all truth. Just required you to interpret more. So when somebody's being indirect with you, many times what they have to say is super, super important. And you've got to find ways to interpret and figure it out, or else it will cost you. It's one of the most painful times in my life was one of our pastors, super indirect, tried to tell me a bunch of stuff, and I kept saying, yeah, that's great, let's do it, it's a great idea. And I thought it was a suggestion. It was a demand. And like 4 or 5 months after that, he like turns in his letter of resignation. I made it clear what I wanted here. And I'm like, that was clear? You know? And I had to really start thinking, at least recognize when people are being indirect with you. The other one, which is very important here, is expressiveness. Why you need to understand this is because expressiveness and directness are the way people resolve conflict. Okay, those two form an XY axis, and people are either direct and expressive or indirect and unexpressive. Those 4 possibilities, that's all across all cultures. So the more you can know about that, the more you can understand conflict, the more you can help diffuse it and not get intimidated by it. All right, so I told you I would show you some of my first scores in this. I took this in first time in 2014. And here's some of my first scores. Look at my nonverbal scores. Amongst the lowest of the lowest worldwide norms. I didn't even know what it meant. I honestly didn't know, what does it mean? What is body language? I don't even know what body language is. I was so confused. And that weekend, we were having an interview with the new chief of police from Little Rock Police Department. So he came to the church, and my job was to interview him. I interviewed him. I thought it went well. Then on Tuesday, the video guy came to me and said, "Hey, Harry, I want you to look at the thumbnail the computer picked out for your segment with Chief Buckner." I'm like, "Okay." And this is what he showed me. Yikes. I honestly did not remember that happening. I went and looked at that video, and it happened this fast. "Hey, Chief Buckner's here. Say a few words to his chief." I handed him the mic, and then I went like this. And that's where it caught me. You know, and I was like, "Oh, Lord, I don't even know what to do with this." And I went to our cultural person. I said, "You know, I just took this assessment. It says I don't know anything about body language." And she was like, "Yeah, obviously." She said, "First thing you do, you never, ever cross your arms when you're standing in front of people." Why? She said, "Because it means something different to everybody." So what does this mean? It means I don't care. What else it means? I'm upset. What else? Yeah, disinterested. In some cultures, this is a posture of prayer. That's my excuse, right? But however you want to couch it is the way people are interpreting. You're giving 100 people a different way to interpret who you are when you're not even trying. You know, and she said, "Don't put your arms like this. Don't put them in your back pockets. Don't put them in your front pockets. Don't put them on your hips." She said, "When you're standing in front of people, do the fig leaf position." I did that for 8 years. I forced myself. Anytime I was, she said, "Also never look down. You always look to the back of the room. You always look at eye level. Don't ever look down." And I worked on that for 8 years until I was in Denver doing this. And the video guy came to me as soon as the session was over, and he said, "Hey, Harry, fig leaf is out." And I went, "Who makes up these rules?" It's like, no, fig leaf, really, it's out because it doesn't come across well on a live stream. So now they tell you either just leave your hands by your side or you talk with them. That's why I like using a mic. At least it keeps one hand occupied, right? And so I don't have to worry about the other one. And so I've been working on this, like, how do I keep from being misinterpreted to a very diverse group of people? If I stood like this, military, at ease, people would automatically have some kind of predisposition about my leadership based on their experience in the military. So you're doing a whole lot with the way you look at people, all of that.
You should do the Bugs Bunny pose. He's always standing on one leg, which is...
Yeah. Anyway, how much time do I have? All right, 10 minutes. If you get a chance, would you give us some feedback on all of this? Just you can scan the QR code. A lot of what you see in these things is based on what people have told us about these. They get refined over time. Yeah. What'd you say? Oh. Oh, great. I'll take my time then. Okay, so, you know, those facial expressions mean a lot. The way you look at people means a lot. The way your resting face is communicates. I've noticed that over the years, especially as I've gotten older, my cheeks starting to droop, along with a lot of other things on my body. It was like, you know, drooping, sagging, whatever, wrinkling up, and it's like, when I look at my face sometimes, I don't look very happy just by being natural. Like kind of like that. And when people see it, they're like, "What's wrong?" And I go, "Nothing." And they're like, "Well, you don't look happy." I'm like, "Well, it's just me." But because my cheeks have kind of drooped, I've had to learn to kind of keep a little smile going instead. But one time, early on in the ministry, this guy was like, Harry, when you look at me, you make me feel like you think you're better than me. And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, there's just this look you have. What is it? I don't even know how to explain it, but when you look at me like that, you make me feel like you're better than me. And I was like, well, I don't feel that way. And he says, well, I'm sorry, but it's just the way it feels. And when I went home, because my scores were so low on all of that stuff, I wasn't aware of any of it. And I asked my wife, Amos said I've got this look, and that when I look at people that it makes them think that I think I'm better than they are. You know what her first response was? Those of you who've been married a long time, what'd she say? I know that look, right? Exactly right. That's exactly what she said. And then the next words totally deflated me. You know what they were? Yeah, when your dad was alive, and he would talk to us many times, he would look at us out of the top of his glasses and kind of lecture us with his finger, and sometimes I see that in you. And I was like, psst, you know, just help me crawl in a hole. And you can see how I could look out the top of those glasses, right? And make people feel that way. That's one reason why I have these glasses. You can't look out the top of them, you know? I'm telling you, I've worked really hard at this CQ stuff. By the way, this is, what'd you say? Yeah, I probably should. This is one of the last times I took the score. Look, I moved all the way into the orange on the nonverbal. So it is possible for you to work on these things and improve your scores over time. Now, what happened with Amos and I, though, we were so young in those early days, we didn't know how to love each other. We were always at each other's throat, always fighting, it felt like. He was one of the first ones. He didn't really come out and say I was racist, but you know he was thinking I was racist because of the look and the way I made him feel. And he said that there were ideas he would have that just felt like I'd shoot him down and that I didn't give him a chance. He said he was so mad because he worked in all these different organizations that treated him like that, and here he was doing it for Jesus and feeling the same way. We were just from different worlds. We didn't know how to love each other. We got into it constantly. One day we were so upset with each other on a Thursday that when we left, it was just the relationship was in disarray. And on Friday, we decided to have lunch together just to talk about it. And so at lunch, we talked about how different we were. We talked about how hard this was. We asked each other to kind of forgive each other. And we just basically said, let's don't give up. Neither one of us felt better. At least we were trying, but we didn't feel like there'd been any kind of breakthrough about that. This is where I want to warn you. If you enter this space, God is going to test you every step along the way. Because this is Amos. That next Sunday, I was scheduled to preach John 13, the new commandment. And Christ said, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I've loved you. By this, all people will know that you're my disciples if you have love for one another. And the first thing I thought of was, what's new about that? This is the night before Jesus died. Certainly, he's taught about loving another disciple before the night before he dies. But you know he doesn't. He teaches on loving the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. He talks about loving your neighbor as yourself. He talks about loving your enemy. But he never talks about this kind of love from disciple to disciple until this night. And I'm sitting there thinking about this, just being so convicted, because the whole time I'm just thinking about Amos and how we didn't know how to love each other. And I was like, I still don't get this. How can I love him when I don't even know how to love him? How can we show the world that we were my disciple, and I'm supposed to preach this on Sunday, and we're in the middle of this conflict. And on Saturday, I finally got so convicted, I called Amos, and I said, hey, Amos, I'm supposed to preach this tomorrow. And I'm having a really hard time just being authentic about it. Could we at least be honest? Would you come up with me during the sermon? I'll preach the passage, and then I just want us to be honest. Let's just tell everybody how hard this has been on you and I. Let's just be honest about the conflict. He said, okay, I'm willing to do that. I said, okay, good. So at least I thought, well, hey, I won't be a hypocrite if I'm honest, right? So that's what we did. And the next morning, when I'm waking up, I'm just thinking, Lord, what would you do? How would you do this? And the answer immediately became, I already showed you what to do. Like just a few verses before that, he washes the feet of his disciples. And he gave that as an example. And I'm like, you really asking us to wash Amos's feet? And then I was like, wait a minute, did you wash Judas's feet? And I went and looked. Sure enough, Judas was in the room when he washed his feet. You know how many times I wish Judas had left and then he washed everybody else's feet? That would have given me such a great out. But this was one of the first times that I actually washed a person's feet in the midst of personal hurt. And so I was like, okay, God, if you really want me to do this, you're going to have to give me the strength to do it. I don't think I can do it, but I'm willing if you really want me to. So I preached the passage, the new commandment, talking about all this. And I said, you know, this is really hard to live. Had Amos come up. Amos and I have been trying to figure this out. We still can't figure it out. We're still trying. I want you to hear from Amos how hard this is. And he got up. Amos is incredibly charismatic leader type. Everybody looks to Amos when he walks in the room. And he was like, you know, Harry and I were from completely different worlds. We don't understand each other. We don't get each other. And we're still trying to figure it out. But he's like, but you can't give up because we're not giving up. And you have to keep trying because we're going to keep trying for the sake of the gospel. And when he got done with this incredibly motivational, inspirational talk about our conflict, I was like, oh, God, I have no choice. And so when he got done, I was like, hey, Amos, stay up here with me. Because this morning when I was asking Christ what to do with this, he was like, I already showed you what to do. I left it for you as an example. And I said, I want to wash your feet. And so I pulled out a pail of water and a pitcher, and when the water hit his feet, just like in all the other times, like the one story I was telling you last night, Amos travailed. He called it, the only thing he could call it was a travailing. He deeply wept and moaned and just howled. It was like when he was, when he was in the middle of all that, I realized, you know, this has nothing, this is way beyond me and him. God is doing something way beyond just our relationship. And what was even more amazing is out in the audience, the whole church was travailing with Amos. Grown men and women were just crying out to the Lord, lamenting, howling, almost like this collective grieving. And I can't explain what happened. Well, we were all a wreck. I mean, Amos was real expressive, and I was super non-expressive at that point. So I was just weeping quietly, you know, but Amos was howling, and everybody else out in the audience was expressing the same thing. And when we got done, the whole church was an emotional wreck. I mean, just like, I don't know, I can't even describe it. The sound that they were making is beyond my ability to articulate. I honestly feel like it was a heavenly sound. I wish I had a recording of it. But afterwards, we were sitting on the front row, Amos and I. Mark was trying to close the service, and in the middle of that, Amos puts his arm around me, and he said, hey, Harry, from this point forward, you are my brother, and I got your back. And just like that, the Holy Spirit removed all anger, all bitterness, all frustration that he and I had against each other. And he knit us closer than brothers to this day. We are this way. And he's doing CQ now, and he tells this story. In fact, NAE, the National Association of Evangelicals, heard it and asked us to record it for one of their podcasts. You can go online and listen to his side of the story now if you want. But I wish I could tell you that we both took CQ and we both learned the cultural values and we both just grew in our understanding of CQ. But in reality, it came down to one thing: the love of Christ. So when you don't know what to do, love beyond what you think you can and see what happens. God will bless it, I promise. All right. Lord, thank you so much for all you've done in my life, in the life of Mosaic Church, in the life of Collegiate Church Network, in the lives of all those who are here today. Bless them, protect them, preserve them, encourage them, sustain them, lift their heads up, give them new life, renew them. We thank you, we love you, we pray it all in Christ's name. Amen.
Can we, was this really good? Stand up. Let Dr. Lee see some appreciation here. That was so good. We really appreciate it. We are going to move right on. As I said, we will get a break, but the break's going to be closer to like 4:15. So we have a few updates to kind of crank through. So let that all sink in and absorb. We're going to have a couple updates from the board, from Reliant, and then we have a treat where Ryan Cozy is going to be introducing us to a dear friend of his who has actually been impacting our network for the last several years, which you'll get to hear more about in a little bit. So I'm just going to leave that hanging so he gets the glory to share. So please welcome up board chair, Wendy Staniger.
Thank you. All right, if you want to stand up, I know you all been sitting for a long time. If you want to stand up, feel free during my update. You don't have to, but I know I like to stand up sometimes just to kind of get a change of pace, so feel free to do that. I guess I should stand up here then. Even though I'm tall, but this way you can see me if you're standing, someone's in front of you. So I'm just going to be quick. I know but I have a lot of information in my brain, so thank you so much, Harry, for everything you shared. I'm just going to give you a few quick updates on the board. So as you know, we have been working hard for the past couple years to provide clarity. That's been our theme for the board, is clarity. And during our January meeting, I thought back through 2024 and all the things that we accomplished in 2024, and I'm not going to show you the list, but there was 14 bullet points of things, which I thought was a lot. The board was very productive. It's a lot of work. So if you're interested in knowing what those bullet points are, feel free to let me know, but just know that the board has been working hard. And just a couple updates. So one thing is, you all know last year we started having each church do an annual affirmation to affirm your commitment to Collegiate. So we are going to do that again. It's an annual thing, and so the deadline is October 1st. But I know I was talking to someone about that, and of course the fall is very busy for your churches. So you can feel free to submit that earlier. You don't have to wait till October 1st. If your team wants to talk through it in the summer and decide, are we going to submit the annual affirmation to Collegiate, you can do that. So I'll probably be reaching out to all of you, just send you the form again. It's not changed. We're trying to keep things the same here this year, but just want to let you know that to have it on your radar for 2025. And then Jay mentioned this last night in his executive director update about the Damascus Road Church. It's a new church that they've submitted their application. We've been in conversations with them as a board. We just had a board meeting last week, so we talked to them about potentially joining, still have some questions, but it's exciting. You know, last year we had a brand new church, Foundation Christian Church, Oakland. Their flag is somewhere over there. So we're excited about the possibility of Damascus Road there in Arizona. So there's that. And then, yes. What's that again? Okay, thank you. It's hard to see up here. The last update I will share is, so we have 2 new board members for 2025. Evan Schuhart is one of them. Thank you so much. He's been a great addition. Very thankful to have him. And then Robbie Poff. Robbie is not here because he allowed his wife to come and he stayed home with the kids, but he has been another great addition from New Life Christian Fellowship. So we're very thankful to have those 2 board members. And then Ryan Cozy up here has been an advisor this year as well. So we have some new blood coming in. It's been great. So, but I want to, in light of that, we also will have some people rolling off the board. We have term limits, of course, for our board members. And so we always are looking for new board members. So if you yourself are interested in being considered, or you know someone who might be a good candidate for the board, I'd love to have you reach out to me. And the reason I bring it up now, even though we still got time for 2025, is sometimes depending on the person, if they're an independent person, maybe not so much part of Collegiate, we might have them attend as an advisor for a little while, or just kind of come to some of our meetings, give them a chance to check us out, check them out. So this, and I really, really want you to take some time to think about. I know your brains right now may be fried, so much information, but this would really help us out. It's so important to have good board members. So please be thinking, praying for yourself and others that may be good fits for that. Again, it can be someone on staff with Collegiate, someone who's not on staff, but someone that you think could be a potential good fit for that. So, yeah, I think that's it. I try to keep it short. And if you have any questions, again, I don't want to, some of you love these board updates. Some of you are like, this is really not something you are that interested in. That's okay. I am not offended at all. But if you are interested in more information, you can feel free to reach out to me. So, all right. And so next we are going to have Reliant. The big man himself is here. So I like to tell this funny story about Tom. Is my daughter, I always say this, used to call him Mr. Armadillo. So you can keep that in mind, that Mr. Armadillo and Mike Swan. So there you go.
Armadillo, more yellow, all sorts of things work. It is really good to be here. I'm going to plug this in real quick. Get a couple slides. There we go. Good. Well, it has been really good to be here, to kind of see everyone. If I haven't had a chance to chat or say hi, I would love to do so. Kind of come find me. But it's been great to be back and be at one of these. I think it was at the last one was in Orlando, and now we're back up north. Wanted to just give a few updates on Reliant. As always, if there's thoughts or questions, anything we can help with, would love to hear from you. But just a few things that are happening, a few updates that are coming up, and kind of how things are going. So as we're looking ahead into 2025, 2026, we really are focusing in on what is our role in partnership with churches, with Collegiate, with donors, and we find ourselves continuing trying to be better at who we've always been, serving the church, mobilizing workers, but ultimately trying to make more ministry happen. It isn't just fundraising for fundraising's sake, but how can we mobilize more people to reach more students, to reach more towns, to send people so that more ministry is happening through the work of Reliant. So kind of currently, kind of state of affairs, we have 1,100 field staff, and we're working with 470 churches and ministries. So we're working real broadly. Something new that's happened, you might have seen coming through, it's been a stretch for some of the central team, like online gamers and Twitch streamers, so like online missionaries trying to reach people through that. So we've had a few interesting partnerships come through. But it's been a good year. Something else we've really been reflecting on is looking back at our history. And from 1989 at the founding through 2024, we've mobilized over 3,000 people. And it's kind of it was a stunning number in some ways when we added up, because it just, you know what it's like with staff, mobilizing people, equipping them, training them. It just feels like a real slow journey. And when we count this is a rough number, our records, we're going to KZ. KZ can only remember so much. She's a human database, but there's limits. But what we mean by mobilized is release to staff. So not just I went to a training, that's a checkbox, but raise their support and to a church, to a residency program overseas, over 3,000 men and women from 1989 to 2024. We are still motivated by this verse. I realize most interactions with Central are about a paycheck or something with a donation, that the gifts of the people we've gathered in Central are largely administrative, but this is still the heart of who we are. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into the harvest field. So we find our purpose there. In the midst of the reimbursements and the forms to process, this is kind of our why. We want to send more workers out into the harvest field. So what we are currently praying about is the next 3,000. So if over this 35 years it's been 3,000, we're praying about the next 3,000. That could be 5 years, that could be 10 years, it could be 20 years. But what does it take for that to continue? That we've been able to be a part of this now, what does it look like next? And so for us, what helps mobilize? What supports? What keeps people in ministry? What are the things that demobilize? What are the things that we could lose people for? That we this captures our hearts and solidifies everything that we're trying to do. So a few just things about that. Second, we want to think about healthy mobilization. So I thought about this when Jay shared something on the first night. I thought it was really good. That for Collegiate to grow by 50 net staff. So we had said we need to recruit 50 staff over the next year. That's 50 staff in total. But we know that any given year, some people leave staff. MTD, calling into something else, a better fit someplace else. Something happens to where they leave staff. Yes, it is true. I imagine someone at your church at some point has left staff. So to actually grow by 50, we need to together mobilize 200 new staff in the next 5 years in Collegiate. So we have about 70 leaders here. That means if each person here could recruit 3 staff members over the next 5 years, we'll hit it. I would love to pray about what if each leader recruits 1 person per year to try out staff. It would be 350. So we do know that we also, on the other side of it, have an impact on why people might leave staff. So in here, we've been doing a lot, and Michael touched on this, with long-term MTD refresh. I also loved the quote last night, when the pastor stays, the problems leave. That we lose leaders, some of our most mature leaders, our most competent leaders, because of MTD struggles. That harms kind of the advancement of the mission. So anything we can do, we're real big on new staff, recruit new leaders. We need to have more people coming in that can be trained up and equipped to be sent, but we also don't want to lose our most experienced leaders. So a number of you here have gone through some kind of MTD refreshes and had some major success stories. It's really, really important. So for us, we want to help with whatever your recruiting efforts are, how we can help support intern residency programs, coaching and initial for MTD to get over that first hurdle, but also to keep people on the field. So that's what we want to be a part of. We want to be able to help and support in any way we can so that we can see kind of that growth we're praying about, and to see what God does through the movement. Next, a few little other central updates. First, it is a great team that serves you. I realize sometimes we have some people come and go, or you don't get a chance to meet everyone. It is really an awesome team at Central. We don't call it the HQ because we're totally remote. So that headquarters implies a building. We call it just Central. But if you have a chance, we'd love for you to meet more of the team. We are almost all remote. That's why I moved to South Bend last year. I think we found out Mike Swan, who lives 6 minutes from the office, might go in once a month. We are, for stewardship's sake, our lease comes up. We will be renting much, much, much less space, maybe even a different address. Still working on it. But the team is remote. What is great about that is it allows us to hire people kind of anywhere in the country. So keep an eye. We might have openings that could fit a student, a graduate, someone in the congregation, and we'd love that opportunity. But it's allowed us to bring on people and keep people all over, and everyone's remote and doing well. A particular hire, some of you may met, is Crystal Wadden, our new HR director. She is actually in Columbus. So I mentioned, hey, if you're in the Columbus area and you wanted to have lunch, she would love to do it. I haven't told her that I've invited all of you to go have lunch with Crystal, but I promise you she would love to connect, meet, and help in any way she can if you haven't had a chance to meet her. The other thing, and you'll hear about this just in a second, we're even trying to do more with international and our short-term trips, so we'll hear about that in a little bit. Next, I wanted to talk just briefly, kind of technology, systems, things we're working on. We know we've had some bumpy roads, so I say that with this. It's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. Prophet Yogi Berra. So I say this with the hope that Greg taught us about on the first night. It is our hope, but we know there's a lot of work to do, so these are kind of our plans and what we're working through. So first, last year, most of the year was spent on a major cloud migration, which means to our staff, it feels like nothing is happening because all we're doing is behind the scenes is moving stuff between databases and over to new systems, so it doesn't feel like much is happening. Then second, we know the past couple of years has been a real struggle after our payroll migration. I do want you to know, just to be very clear, when I take responsibility for the payroll challenges we have, we know things have smoothed out. Sarah Swan and Barb Seckler are unbelievable heroes. They have worked tirelessly to try and catch problems, fix a system. Short check and back pay gets real complicated, but they're working very, very hard. We do want to hear if there's a problem. It's real important if there's still a persistent issue or a payroll issue, they want to hear, but they could use a pat on the back. Sarah and Barb have really kind of pulled us up and really saved us in a lot of ways, but we're investing a lot to fix it and looking at some additional changes soon. So things are going better. We know that's been a challenge, but we're putting a lot into it. There's essentially no limits in what we're doing to kind of tighten up the system. But from that, now that we've done kind of our major migration, we think the next 2 years are going to be a lot more feature-focused, so things you might feel, things that would be exciting to see happen versus you just hear, oh, you were doing stuff behind the scenes that didn't seem to help. First, and this might have launched, soft credit foundation gift reporting. So if on Toolbox you used to see, I got a gift from National Christian Foundation, but I don't know which donor told them to do that you're going to be able to see that. That might have already launched. Did that already launch? I don't know if it launched. It's done. Like the work is done, so you'll be able to see it. The big one, and dare I say I go back to Yogi Berra first, but gift and donor notifications, like a whole new gift and donor system. Yes, yes. Again, blame me, not the developers. We needed it to base on the whole new cloud infrastructure, so we couldn't write it in the last 2 years, but this is going to be a whole thing. It's the next big project. It has been the most requested feature. I said it on stage. We're working on it this year. We're going. Next, you may have already seen it on the homepage, but Reliant.org is getting a major refresh, kind of the whole thing. We're doing it instead of like a major project, take 8 months and then lift the curtain. We're just doing it piecemeal. So over the next 3 to 6 months, you'll see the main website change a lot. Working on HR tools, self-service with the new systems. We can connect Toolbox to it. Fun little cool stuff. We've already got direct deposit. So things that should be pretty easy, but we should have a lot more things like that coming through. And then the next thing I will say, again, with trepidation, because I'm standing on stage with a microphone, 2026 is where we would start creating the tools to fully replace MPDX, TNT MPD, all that stuff, that you would just be able to do all your MTD through Toolbox. Same thing, it's going to be a phased approach. Instead of taking a year where no one sees anything and you kind of pull a curtain back, it'll be more likely like this feature got added, and then at some point we just don't need those other tools. So that's a 2026. We are on target for these, but I do say it with the humility to know we've predicted in the past where we'd be, and we end up a little bit further back on the calendar. And more to come, lots more that we're thinking through. So with that, just want to say thank you. We know what you do is the reason why we exist, that ministry and how you're connecting and working in the kingdom. And so always, if there's any way we can help, if there's any way I can help, please do not hesitate to reach out. But now, I'm going to introduce you to, well, you know Mike and Mike from Reliance Central.
Don't worry, if we do change locations, we'll send out approximately 365 emails to let you know as the progress moves, as we move. Hey, so one of the things he mentioned was MTD health and growth. Obviously, we've talked about this the last couple times we've met. It's huge on my heart to see that that anyone that's in this room or in other rooms that wants to stay in ministry vocationally through Reliant has the tools in front of them to have that happen. One of the things we've added, and I just want to tell you how much like Tom's vision, like you guys saw me, like I was on the far left-hand side, right, of that short-term thinking, right, of what's in front of me. Tom's like over here at like 112 on that as far as how far he sees down the road. And one of the things he saw down the road was if we grow, it's going to long-term help everybody in this room. Because we'll have more people, more eyes on things. One of the ways I've seen that is through our MTD health team. That has grown and expanded a ton with the opportunity to help you all and to help your people who have a front door, right? We've talked in the past about how many hats we wear with that student who was a freshman, and we saw them come to know Jesus, and then they came on staff, and we're best friends, and we did their wedding, and I'm their pastor, I'm their boss, and I'm their MTD coach. Our hope is to be able to take one of those hats off and to be able to do a lot of that MTD coaching for you on your behalf, so that there's one less hat. It doesn't mean you have to take us up on that after. You can still keep in-house MTD, but we want to be able to take that hat off and be in communication with me and Russ. Russ is doing a lot of the communication with this because you might hear different things than what you're used to. You might hear things that make you nervous, like text messaging to get an appointment, right? Things have changed since 1998 when I was in the lobby of this pink stucco hotel, right? And I'm making phone calls on a payphone, right? Putting coins in. Things have changed, and so. But if you hear things that you're like, I don't know, I don't understand, or things that don't seem to be computing, talk to us. Let us walk through it. Let us help bridge those gaps. Some of you have already done a great job with that, and I'm thankful for it, to reach out because I think this is a way we can really serve. Two big words that start with C for your MTD health. What are they? What? Cash, cultivation. Okay. That new products that we have done in the last 2 years. Clarity. No. Consults and cohorts. Yes. Please take us up on those, especially as we're getting into that season of going into summer. And what a lot of us do when we're getting ready for MTD Health is we're just kind of hemming and hawing, and we're a little unsure about MTD Health. And then we find ourselves in mid-July, and we're like, oh, I didn't actually do any MTD, right? Not that any of us have ever done that before, right? But jump in now and start getting yourself into a consult, and then get yourself into a cohort if that would be helpful for you, because we want to do that for you. Okay. One of the things I get to do is hear a lot of stories. This great story of some folks that were at NLCF, go Hokies, and old friends of ours who were raised up in a college-based church, who then moved away, came back, went into rural Southwest Virginia, very quickly joined an eldership team of a new church plant, right? They got raised up through our churches. And then I said, wait, isn't that where somebody else goes who we worked with, went to an LT, learned how to be a worship leader, and got raised up? They're all working together at this new church plant. Turns out there's another guy that wants to plant out of their church, and he's like, we want you to use this group called Reliant. And we're like, oh, he's like, oh, I've already used Reliant. I was at Virginia Tech at Crew, and then I went to Louisville, and I did a residency 10 years ago, and now I've moved all the way back down to Christiansburg, and we want to work together. Why do I say that? Because we have such amazing sending power out of our churches Not just to come back to our own churches, which we need to do. We need to raise up those staff so we can plant more of these churches that have great sending power. But one of the ways we have sent people is sent people all over the country and all over the world. That 98% of people that Jay pointed out on that slide that don't stay back in our church, we can send them out and we can do things. And one of the people who's helping, I want to help with that, is Mike Easton. Mike Easton, can you come up? Some of you have met him. Mike runs our international program team. So Mike is like the Mike of Collegiate. So this is the Mike of international. And he's going to tell us a little bit about some opportunities that are coming your way.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Mike, for letting me come on up. So my name is Mike Easton, and I am the International Program Manager for Reliance. I went to Iowa State University and spent a few years on staff with a college ministry there. And God called my wife and I overseas for 2 years to China to work with the IMB for a few years. And it was during that time that one of the reasons why we ended up going is because some of the college students that I was working with were like, man, we went on summer trips to these places and they need discipleship, and just the experiences these students were having drew my wife and I to there. And so we went there for a few years, and then one of the things that we experienced while we were over there is our church and other churches around us were sending us college students during that whole time. And we had hosted about 100 college students for short-term trips. Loved the opportunity to be able to do that, to hang out with those students and go deep in life over the course of a summer. But those students were able to share the gospel with over 5,000 people when we were there for 2 years. That's something my wife and I never could have done, never could have gotten taken care of in 5 years. But students were a critical part of that opportunity. And so when I went back to work at my church, I did for about 11 years, just kind of like focused on helping work with international students, helping raise up long-term missionaries. And it was through that process as a church, we were sending kind of on our own. We were charting our course, and we had long-term missionaries. We had about 25 from a few different churches that we were a part of. And that's actually when we found Reliant at that point. And you can imagine my relief. So I was really a client of Reliance as a church early on, and you can imagine my relief to not have to deal with all the accounting and all the different things like that, and to be able to partner with Reliance to take care of that. And what it allowed us to do as a church network was to continue to send more and more people. And so we got up to about 60 or so people that were sent from our church network to, with Reliant to be overseas. And so it was 3 years ago that Corey Crawford Van Oss stepped down, and I had the opportunity to step into the role. And we've been able to see God do some really incredible things. I've really personally enjoyed the opportunity to be able to meet different churches, to be here at this event, to see what God's doing around the world. And as of just this year, we got to 350 people that are internationally right now in 45 different countries with a little over 100 partnerships. And God's been really blessing the opportunity to partner with groups like you all know, like Great Commission Europe or Great Commission Latin America, but many other groups as well. And so it's been a real privilege to see what God does and what he continues to do through college students, through young grads, and even families that would go overseas. And so the types of groups that we serve, one of the things that we do and that we're trying to grow in is and this is kind of our open funnel for people, is that churches would send short-term trips with us, and we'd handle kind of all the details and logistics of that sort of thing. So we have a growing number of churches that are doing that. So if it would ever help you, I know a lot of your churches probably are able to take care of that on your own in-house, but if it would help you for us to be able to take care of the logistics or some of the fundraising aspects of it and some of the other logistics of short-term trips, we'd love the opportunity to be able to help you with that as well. But what we continue to see happening around is we see teams of people from churches, we see individuals, we see partnerships with organizations where people are seeing the need of the gospel around the world and are understanding that cultural intelligence to be able to go out and to share that gospel with many people. One of the exciting partnerships, I know we've got a few churches that are connected to the Southern Baptist world, but we formed a partnership with the IMB to be able to do kind of more midterm opportunities and also some long-term opportunities through their missions residency and through their team associate process as well. But just as as a person coming from a college church, and one of the things I was excited about coming to this conference is just meeting more people who love college students. And like was said today, they're the most mobile people on the face of the planet. And one of the great opportunities that you all have as you send out college students to jobs and other opportunities is maybe send some of those people out to the world where Jesus is not known. And what I'm here to say is I would just love the opportunity, and Reliant has the vision and the desire to help you be able to see what could it look like for you to send internationally. Does that look like, are there short-term trip opportunities that we could help facilitate? Are there long-term efforts or connections that we can help you to be able to make? We'd love the chance to be able to do it. God is really moving in some great ways in our midst, and He will continue to do. So I'm going to be here throughout the rest of the time that we have together, but I'd also love to, anytime that you'd like to grab a phone call or to just have you email me or something like that. So my email is pretty easy. It's mike.easton@reliant.org. And love the chance to consult with churches, just talk, even if you're like, maybe we're not going to send with Reliant specifically, but we just love somebody to give us some advice on what it looks like to do sending from our church and things like that. Love the chance to be able to talk with you about that. So exciting things that are happening overall. So great, good. I think I'll give it back over to Jay here, but hey, I'll be around for dinner and stuff, so sit at my table. Love to talk about it.
Awesome. All right, so as I said, we're going to be continuing to plug away. However, change of plans. We are ahead of schedule now. Amazing. Yeah, so actually, we want you back in here. If you could be back in here in 15 to 20 minutes. We're actually starting right at 3:45. It's going to be kind of a panel interview, which should be really good, from someone who has impacted a lot of ministry all over the globe, including ours. So we're excited for that. And then the rest of the time, we'll be in here, and when we get done with that, we'll give you a few more instructions, but we will be active at that point. We're going to pull out tear sheets. We're going to be up and around talking about evangelism, some other stuff. So take 20 minutes. We're back here in 20. And get up, go stretch your legs. There's a sun outside. Go get some rays.